Okay, so let's start for today's Crito. Okay, before we read, Jim, you want to talk about something, right?
No.
No, a surprise. So I think the setting is quite simple, right? Because Plato is in jail and not Plato, sorry, Socrates is in jail, and then his friend come to visit him. Okay, in the early morning, and then I think the setting is in the early morning, Socrates is sleeping well, and then Crito doesn't bother to waking up, and he wonders how come he sleeps so well, while Crito has many sleepless night because he worried about Socrates. I think that's the setting, and then the date is February 13th, 399 BCE. Okay, that's the day. It was 2 days before execution. So, okay, so
That's not in the text, is it?
no, it's not, but that's my secondary source. Okay.
Okay. So do you think that the fact that Plato writes about Socrates's serenity is an important part of the dialogue?
You mean this text?
Yeah.
I think that's important. That's important. That means continue from apology, okay? Because it's not enough just have Socrates have a final speech. So he need. I think that we mentioned this one before, right? Uh, uh, how do I say that? Okay, apology is about philosophy, and Crito is about the law, the politics, and Phaedo is about religion, the soul. I think that's important in the text, and so I think that's
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, so should we read?
Yeah.
Okay, let's go ahead.
The Crito is a relatively short dialogue which should be read in conjunction with and between the Apology and Phaedo. The Apology gives an account of Socrates' trial and condemnation. The Phaedo describes his last conversations and death. The Crito recounts a friend's urgent plea for Socrates to avail himself of the ample opportunity to escape, and the latter's justification on moral grounds for remaining in prison voluntarily, although the execution will occur 2 days after the present one. The dialogue is probably meant to explain Socrates' personal reasons for taking this course of inaction, rather than to prescribe a universally applicable norm for the individual unjustly condemned by the state. And some writers have suggested that Plato himself would probably have chosen to escape rather than to accept the sentence. Yet profound political, social, and moral issues are raised to which there are no easy solutions. Their complications are such that readers may find their own judgments falling on either side of an exceedingly fine line.
All right. So of course, Plato did escape. Okay, after Socrates' death. So
Plato escaped?
yeah, because after the death of Socrates, he went out, right? Before the trial. You don't believe so?
Actually, no, but I think it's possible. But
That's
in
what
any case, it's quite different to escape like that, to, go to another city and help the ruler. You're talking about when he went to Syracuse and helped Dionysius?
no. Before he went to Syracuse, he went to Italy, become the Pythagoreanism, study with.
Well, I never consider that that was escaping anything.
Oh yeah, you
Just
can
consider that as just traveling and educating himself.
Yeah, but to avoid the political trouble, I think that's one of the reason. Most of, I should not say most, a lot of people believe that's the reason he.
Well, I never read that, but in any case, um, what I found interesting about this paragraph was McGill's interpretation that this is basically Socrates' view, and it is not necessarily Plato's view. That seems to be in the paragraph, it seems to suggest that these are the words that Plato put into Socrates, but they are not Plato's view. And I have read from secondary sources myself that there seems to be a general acknowledgement that this is true. And one of the confirmations of this idea is the fact that when Plato later writes his Politics and Laws, he doesn't ever bring up the notion of the social contract that Socrates did, and he seems to have quite a different view, which is based on authoritarianism and a whole different perspective on politics. So in our discussion, which is going to extend while we consider all of these dialogues that we're reading, one of the topics is, what is Socrates' view compared to what is Plato's view? And I think that it can be quite confusing if you try to jam together all of the dialogues and say they're just Plato's view, because there seem to be some contradictions between the 2 points of view.
Yeah, I agree. Because the law is a totally different system, and then there's no concept of no social contract, this kind of concept, and basis is very authoritarian law. But one common thing is they all use we, okay, as a law speaker. Okay, so I find that's interesting.
They all use what?
We, okay.
We.
Yeah. Okay.
What's we?
We. So in Crito, right? The argument Socrates used we as the law to tell him. Okay. Same as in laws. Okay. Plato also used we as the law say something. So I think that's the interest part. At least I haven't read in other place. Use we as the subject, the speaker of law.
Yeah.
Let me put it on hold just 1 minute.
Let's make another point.
Yeah,
Let me just make another point, that when McGill writes that Plato didn't really believe this, he's just recording what Socrates had as his personal reasons. In a way, it's what McGill does is, first of all, he diminishes the philosophical importance of this work. Second of all, he deflects criticism from those in modern times like Hannah Arendt and others who have criticized the whole idea that you should always just obey the law. So in some ways, it seems to make the work as philosophy a little bit less interesting to me, because one of the things that I found interesting about it is its absolute character. And yet McGill, when he's writing his summary, seems to undercut that absoluteness and just say, well, this is just Socrates' words, not necessarily the Platonic doctrine.
You mean McGill talk about this way?
McGill in this last paragraph says that this isn't really what Plato would do. In fact, Plato probably wouldn't even listen to this advice. This is just Socrates.
Oh,
In a way, it deflects criticism of those who would argue that the view is authoritarian and totalitarian, and that, you know, and therefore you don't have to defend a view which would, you know, in the
uh,
case of Socrates, would be very provocative.
so you say that's what not Plato will do. It means,
That's what the paragraph said.
yeah. So what does he mean? He mean Plato will escape?
So it's almost as if this isn't really part of philosophy. It's just kind of, what's the point of writing it down as a dialogue if it's not something that Plato believed was, you know, a correct view?
So you
He
mean
says here, um, Plato would probably, it says,
Plato himself?
uh, this dialogue is probably meant to explain Socrates's personal reasons for taking this course. Well, personal reasons
Right, hold on.
isn't really philosophy. In the middle of the paragraph, he says, this dialogue is probably meant to explain Socrates' personal reasons for taking this rather than to prescribe a universally applicable norm. But that's what makes the dialogue so interesting, is the notion that he may be prescribing a universal form. It would be like with Kant. If Kant said that we use reason and we determine what is right and wrong, and we should always do right. And then somebody came along and said, Kant didn't really believe this. He just was, you know, he didn't really, this wasn't a prescription on his part. This was just something else.
So you disagree with McGill?
I don't disagree with McGill, but I think it undercuts Plato to write that this isn't a prescriptive philosophy, because it seems to me that Socrates is laying out a prescriptive rule for how we should live.
Yeah, I agree with you.
And I would have thought that
Okay,
Plato
I
would
got
have
it.
liked it
Yeah, okay,
and
I
would
got
have
your point.
agreed with it. Not that Plato didn't really believe it. He would, he would have left the first chance he got.
Yeah, but plus he's much younger, so
Younger,
I think
younger
that's
or not,
important.
it's still,
No, I think the age is important. If Socrates was 30 years old,
yeah,
he,
well, he mentioned the age. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So I think,
McGill doesn't mention the age. McGill just says, well, this is just, yeah,
well, I think age
look,
played an important
you
role.
think, well, I can't absolutely contradict you, but all I can say is that Socrates mentions it, but doesn't make a big deal of it. Most of his defense, the great bulk, 95% of his defense, are other matters than age. He just mentions the age briefly.
If you say social contract is important, then
That's
age,
his main emphasis.
well, then age is important because he has been in this contract for 70 years.
He doesn't mention that.
He mentioned that. Yeah,
That's inference.
no, in the text, he said, I'm 70. That means I have been agreed. I have the 70 years opportunity to escape. Because if you disagree this contract, you can leave according to their custom.
Okay.
Okay, so he said, I've lived for 70 years. So I have a plenty of chance to leave. But
So he says in the dialogue, this isn't in the summary, so I'm assuming it's in the text. He
it's in the
says
text.
in the dialogue, I have lived according to the social contract for 70 long years.
Yes.
And the fact that I have agreed to it for so long means that I have to abide by its rule now. See, that's not in the McGill.
Okay, we will see. Yeah, okay, let's see.
Okay,
Brilliant. Okay, so let's move on.
yeah.
Okay, when the
When the
dialogue.
dialogue opens, Socrates has been in prison a month for no death sentences could be carried out in Athens during the annual voyage of the state vessel to Delos in commemoration of the legendary deliverance of the city from the Minotaur by Theseus. But the ship is reportedly about to return, and Crito, having arrived at the prison before dawn, is waiting for Socrates to awake in order to break the news and try to persuade him to escape while there is yet time. It is typical of Socrates that he slumbers peacefully while Crito is wakeful and desperate, and that in the ensuing discussion, it is Socrates who is more rational and objective, though it is his own life which is at stake.
Okay, so before dawn, yeah. So this dialogue is simple, basically only two player. Okay, so that's it talking about two people talk, and then early in the morning. I think that's the setting. I think I mentioned before.
I know that you make some effort in the dialogues to pay attention to the frame
Yeah.
that is presented, and a lot of times you derive special meaning from the frame.
Yes.
But I gather that in this case, the frame is very simple. The interaction, just because it only occurs between two people, is simple. So there's
Mm-hmm.
really not a lot to discuss in terms of the frame. However, he's setting out, Plato is establishing his particular style, which is going to involve frames. And we're going to see in future dialogues that the frame has more importance, right?
Excuse me, I missed the
We're
word.
going to see in the future that the frame has more importance. In this case, it has to do with, the liberation of the Greeks by Theseus from the Cretan, from the Minotaur. That probably doesn't relate to the theme of the dialogue.
Well, okay, yeah. Well, probably there's a different way of reading, and then I always pay attention on the frame, the
Mhm.
background, the setup. Okay, what's the
Yeah.
format he talking about? Uh,
Mhm.
I believe that's important, and then so I make a mark here. So when I put a note here, the subject here, right? Important subject is early morning, okay? And the two important subject, one is sleeping, okay? Because Socrates is still sleep soundly, and Crito has a sleepless night. Secondly, that's why back I mentioned uh, 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 they talk about how early, okay, uh, Crito asks how easily and calmly you bear it in this situation. Socrates answer, it's because it will be out of tune, Crito, to be angry at my age if I must finally die. Okay, so age is important. Okay, he's old. Okay, and then it's no reason to be angry about his time. Okay, that's why I said and age is important because he mentioned at the beginning. Okay,
Yeah.
so same as when we read the Phaedo. Okay, probably most
But
of
there's
it.
nothing about,
Okay,
I understand about the age. I know he mentioned it, he dropped it in passing. He doesn't say it doesn't have anything to do with the length of the social contract, though.
well,
But
we will
in
see.
any case, we can have our own perspectives on that. But
Yes, yeah.
I have an observation about this last paragraph that has to do with the fact that Socrates is sleeping and Crito is all agitated.
Okay, go
And it
ahead.
is that although Plato doesn't um, doesn't turn this into an important point of his philosophy, later philosophers are going to be very interested in ataraxia and apatheia, which is a way to eliminate anxiety and worry from life.
Mm.
And that entire philosophies are going to be based on how can we relieve ourselves from the anxiety of living. And various schools formed and made this central to their ethical theory of eudaimonia. Eudaimonia comes with the relief of tension and anxiety. And I pointed this out before, but Socrates was, because Plato's dialogues were read by everyone, they became the inspiration for several different schools, especially the, various schools. For example, the cynical school and the Stoic school and the skeptical school
Mhm.
all emphasized relief from anxiety, and they all use Socrates as a role model. And it's ironic and somewhat comical when we look at all of these different schools that go in totally different directions, and yet they all are using Socrates as kind of the originator of their school. But this is the kind of paragraph that we read where even though he's facing death, he's completely calm and not worried. That became an inspiration for these other schools. And that's why I say that even though there are no particular arguments which are given in this place, that indirectly, just by creating a portrait as he does, Socrates had an influence on philosophy, like I say, as a role model.
Yeah, that's true. Same as apology, Crito, and even more.
Apology too. But
Yeah,
in
and
this,
even more on the fiddle. Okay, how come he's on the
yeah,
deck?
right. Because
Yeah,
he calmly faces death. But
yeah.
we see an anticipation of that here. Yeah,
Okay, next
that's
one.
it.
Crito's reason for.
Crito's reasons for urging Socrates to escape, though perhaps on a less lofty plane than the latter's rebuttal, are not specious, but are rather quite practical and persuasive. It is the weight of these, plus that of the circumstances under which Socrates was condemned, which gives the dialogue its moral significance. Crito begins by pointing out that if Socrates dies, an irreplaceable friend will have been lost. And besides, Crito will gain a reputation for loving money more than his friends, since many people will think he could have saved Socrates had he only been willing to put up with the necessary cash. They will not believe that Socrates stayed in prison voluntarily.
Uh, yeah, I have nothing to say about this one.
Well,
This
I just want to say that I agree with McGill that part of the strength of this dialogue lies in the fact that Crito gives some very reasonable and persuasive objections to Socrates on why he should not just accept death by hemlock. And
Mhm.
one of the reasons is that he will harm his friends and he will destroy their reputation. Those are normally considered to be consequences which people, you would think, would take very seriously. And yet it seems as if Socrates just dismisses them. They don't,
Mhm.
no matter what kind of consequences there are, he's going to just do what he thinks is right. And it's a kind of an absolutist philosophy that people criticize Kant for. Kant says, just do what's right, and spends a great deal of time talking about how different consequences that might result from your action might be very harmful. There might be death, there might be this, there might be that. But you should concentrate on just doing what's right. And
Yeah, in this way,
that's the
Socrates,
philosophy that Socrates offers too.
yeah, Kantian philosophy. So,
It's Kantian philosophy.
okay, that's
It's
great.
what we call non-consequentialist because
Yeah,
we're not
so yeah, I
interested
think
in consequences.
that's a good point. The Crito's argue basically is a consequentialist argument, right? I will lose an irreplaceable friend. I will have the bad reputation. Blah 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 blah. Right? And the not Kant, Socrates' argument is very deontological. Okay, so basically talk about that's the principle, that's the social contract, that's blah blah blah. But also consequentially, I think eventually he talked about Socrates' kids will be better live, with he died and exile. There's many things. So it's
Yeah,
not,
that's true. He does consider it a little bit.
yeah,
That's
it
true.
can be a little bit, but basically his main argument is
Mm. Yeah,
deont,
but don't you agree that
yeah,
many of Crito's objections, just as McGill points out, are quite reasonable?
yeah,
That
but
there is quite a
consequentially,
bit of harm that can be caused, and these are no trifling matters.
yeah, to me the most convincing one, if I were Socrates, the most convincing one is replaceable friend. Okay, if I'm so
Yeah,
important
right.
to so
Mhm.
many
Well,
people,
what about the children being left without a father?
well, Socrates already refuted it. So he said the children without being executed would be better than uh, he exiled, right? So unless he bring his
Okay, well, that's a good argument. Yeah.
yeah, and unless he is able to bring his children, and well, he probably don't want to bring his wife. Okay, so to to
No, he could leave her in Athens.
okay, so Socrates.
Socrates answers that men of reason will believe only the truth. Why should one regard majority opinion? Crito then points out that popular opinion is not to be taken lightly, which fact is confirmed by Socrates' present circumstances. But the philosopher replies that common people, unfortunately, are of limited capacity to do evil, since otherwise they could likewise do great good. Actually, they can make one neither wise nor stupid. Here again, we note the Socratic identification of wisdom and virtue and his belief that no real evil can happen to a good man, even if his body is destroyed.
Just 1 minute. I think I'm not quite sure what McGill talking about. From
I
the
mean, where in the last
Yeah, no, no, no.
part of parentheses?
Okay. Crito points out that the popular opinion is okay. So first, Socrates said, uh, we should not care about the majority opinion, right? And Crito then point out that popular opinion is not to be taken lightly, not to be taken lightly, which fact is confirmed by Socrates. Okay,
That
uh,
makes sense.
that means Socrates being condemned to death
Right,
by the majority, right? But
exactly.
reply that the common people, unfortunately, of limited capacity to do evil. Okay, so okay, I got the point. I got the point. So okay, I think I got the point. So basics, uh, he is talking about they cannot do great evil. So reject the people will say Crito were precious money more than Socrates' life. Uh, because they cannot do much harm because they are not capable to do much harm on that.
And he points out that they're not capable of doing much harm because they're not capable of doing much
Yeah,
good.
that's Socrates' counter argument.
And
Rebut.
I found it sort of a paradox And I enjoy Plato putting these sort of provocative paradoxes in Socrates' mouth. And while I'm preparing for these discussions each week, I'm also researching and learning about Plato's other dialogues.
Mhm.
And there are, several other early dialogues. And I noticed that in one of the dialogues, which is called Greater Hippias,
Uh-huh.
that the dialogue is discussion of Odysseus, and they're trying to figure out whether, since Odysseus is constantly lying, whether that makes him a worse person than Achilles. And Socrates says that the people who lie the best are the people who tell the truth the best. And so
Okay.
that reminded me of this, where he says the people who aren't capable of uh, only the people who are capable of great evil are capable of great good.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Just thought I'd bring that up to show that it's kind of a stylistic, um, it's a stylistic quirk of Plato, which reminds me a little of Nietzsche, because Nietzsche likes throwing paradoxes out also that make you think.
Yeah, same as that's why he keep the dialectical or the dialogue, right? In the text. So instead of writing an essay, especially in his early dialogue, there's a lot of conversation back and forth. So that's the way Plato is able to show many different view of one thing, you know. Okay, next one.
Okay.
Okay, Crito.
Crito acquiesces in this point, but continues by assuring Socrates that he need not be concerned about any consequences to his friends if he chooses to escape, which apparently would have been quite easy under the circumstances, if not actually desired or intended by those who brought Socrates to trial. They are prepared to risk a large fine, loss of property, or other punishment. There is plenty of money available to buy off informers, and Crito knows men who will take Socrates out of the country for a moderate fee. Not only Crito's money, but also that of Simmias and Cebes, foreigners who would not be so liable to punishment, is at Socrates' disposal. At his trial, Socrates had rejected banishment to a foreign society, but Crito assures him of comfort and protection among friends in Thessaly.
Crito is from Sicily, right?
No, I didn't know that. No, I read something different.
No, it's not from there. Oh, that's Mino, right? The Mino is from Sicily. Yeah, Crito probably is Athenian, I think. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sicily is Mino from Sicily.
Right.
And then Simius and Cebes. That's the. I don't know. Is there anything to say about this before?
Yes. This notion that a philosopher might need to escape because he's challenging orthodoxy. Um, when one learns about all of the great philosophers and the number of times that they have been forced to run away from their town, um, you realize that this is really very much a part of being a philosopher that over time will be uh, considered important because they challenge the orthodoxy. And what I notice is that when philosophers escape at some occasions, then their ideas die. But there are other occasions when they flourish.
Yes.
In the case of Aristotle, and Anaxagoras and various other people, Ovid, they were forced to just retire. They didn't do any writing of their great works once they were forced into a separation. But then what you have in Europe was a situation when all the great philosophers were challenging their own countries, and they were all going to Holland, which had free expression. And that allowed them to write all of their greatest works. And it's just amazing to me how many great works were written by expatriates who had fled to Holland. And just imagine, sometimes, one of the interests I have is in trying to understand why it is that Europe has created such great philosophy over the last 1,000 years. One of the reasons is that there was always a place to escape to. Duns Scotus fled to northern Germany. Descartes preferred Holland to France because I think he would have gotten in trouble there. And on and on. Just
Yeah,
Locke.
even Locke, right? Locke went to.
Locke fled England, and he did his greatest writing in Holland.
Yes,
And
that's right. Yeah.
just, could go on.
Yeah, because I think that's important. You have a place to escape. It's very
You have a
important.
place to escape. Now, what happened in China? Did they have a place to escape? During the
No,
Warring period, yes. And
only
that's when the
during,
great
yeah, only during
philosophy
the, yeah,
was
that's
created.
because after 221 BCE, China become one country, the
Right.
philosophy died. Basically, you
There
have
was no place you
no
could
place.
challenge orthodoxy
Then
without just being destroyed.
yeah, and they become one harmony, and in the warring state period of time, because you will see all the philosophers they got unhappy or not being used or being suppressed by their own country, they escape and to the foreign, not foreign, sometimes the enemy, and
Right.
got hired by the emperor or king, and
Right.
they start to work. Okay, so
And
uh,
where they do their best philosophy.
so
Mhm.
loyalty to your country, patriotism is the worst virtue.
It seems to be. Yeah.
To me, that's it. The patriotism, love your country. No way.
Yeah.
You should love your enemy. At
I
least
think
for
another idea that comes out of it is that great thinkers challenge orthodoxy. It's just the nature of great philosophy that it will do that.
yeah, and why you live? Because you challenge people, you rebel. Okay, I rebel, therefore I exist. That's a Camus saying. I think
That's true.
that's important. Now, why I live? If I agree with everybody, I'm no difference than other people. So, okay, move on.
Yes.
Furthermore,
Furthermore, he continues, Socrates will do a wrong in voluntarily neglecting to save his life. He will be inflicting on himself the penalty his enemies wished. And what of his young sons? Will he not be failing them by leaving their education unfinished and deserting them to the lot of orphans? Crito finishes his argument by expressing once more his concern for the reputation both Socrates and his friends will incur if he refuses escape. A reputation for cowardice and a lack of initiative resulting from one, Socrates' unnecessary appearance in court. It was customary for Athenians whose conviction was probable to leave the country before trial. Two, the manner in which the defense was made. Socrates had refused all compromise and had deliberately taken a position which might and did result in conviction. And three, the present situation, which will suggest sheer bungling and lack of spirit. In short, the suffering of Socrates' death will be augmented by disgrace.
um, So that's Crito give more reason, right? Socrates has a bad reputation if he not escape. So he appear to the court, okay, because he can choose not to. Socrates didn't make a effective argument for his innocence. Socrates show they're not coward, okay, if he didn't escape. I think that's what his point. Actually,
So,
cowardice can be argued in the both either way, right? You you are you are a coward because you dare not to escape, or you can say you are coward, you afraid of death. So
that's a good point. Mhm. But what strikes me about this section, once as I said before, is just uh, the fact that the objections that Crito presents are so persuasive, because there are many people who would die for honor. Honor is considered so important, a person's reputation. And I think that people are it's considered to be a great nobility of character if you would die for honor. And when he brings that up, Socrates' argument against it is that no, doing right is more important even than honor, which I think is a bold statement.
yeah, I think that's a very good argument. Yeah, I think I totally agree with you that Plato provide the honor argument, right? And that we should remember the honor during that time probably more important than we thought. We are thinking today,
I
because
agree.
their only moral teaching is Homer. Homer is heroic,
I
okay,
agree. Mhm.
education, okay, honor, okay,
Honor. Mhm.
is the most important. So we can see uh, the moral or the principle argument is more important than honor. Okay,
Right.
so I think in today we may see that's okay, but yeah, during that time could be very controversial or original idea.
Well, I still think it's important. I still think it's relevant today, myself.
That's you. You are not majority. So.
I know. You're right. Absolutely. Honor is very important in the English tradition. You know,
Yeah, I
I
think
have an
so.
Anglo background. So,
Oh, you say you still think honor is important.
yeah,
Okay, good for you. I think living is more important than honor, so I will escape whenever possible. So
well, most of the philosophers that we've you know we've learned about have taken the same road as you're suggesting.
yeah, so I almost want to say cowardice is one of the greatest virtue, what the greatest.
Right.
Because that means you can survive. Okay, then
Yeah,
remember, if you survive long, you live long, you will become a good philosopher. That's
that's a good point.
you
Yeah.
see, all the great philosophers, they usually live long time. So
Right. Mhm.
okay, move on.
To all this, Socrates makes a reply remarkable for its calm, detached, and rational tenor. Much as he appreciates Crito's concern, he points out that his choice to face death is not a sudden impulse. His practice has always been to follow the course reason shows to be best. The question then is whether the opinions he has previously adopted are still true, or whether their truth has been altered by the turn of events. He must not be frightened into a change of outlook, he assures Crito, by imprisonment, loss of goods, or execution. With characteristic but kindly irony, Socrates asks Crito to consider the matter with him, for since Crito is in no danger of death, he is more likely to be impartial and objective.
Um, So you want to say anything about this?
Just that this paragraph once again reminds me of how similar Socrates is as a role model to the Stoic ideal. Because remember that the Stoics valued reason more as a way to attain virtue. And this methodology that Socrates is presenting to us of using reason and then following virtuous activity, and that will assure you of equanimity, seems to be the Stoic ideal.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I think here, what I see here is consistency, right? So, well, you can say consistency because there's a reason. So, uh, but I do see here he talking
Yeah,
about,
because reason is, reason is eternal, and
yeah,
reason
it's
is,
eternal. So basically, he
but
said,
that's also a Stoic view.
yeah, I agree. I agree. That's why I said it's not disagree, but I just take a different view on this one because as previous adopted are still true, right? Or whether their truth has been altered by the turn of events. I think the important here is something I hold true, but I don't change it because I'm in danger, right? I believe this is true, and that I don't care. I don't. It should be consistent. Okay, even my life is in danger, right? Okay. Uh, should we go to the next paragraph?
Yes.
It is not true, right?
Is it not true, he asks, that only some opinions are tenable and not all, that those to be respected are the good ones, and that these belong to the wise? And is it not the case that the opinions of a few qualified experts, rather than those of the masses, are to be regarded as is illustrated in the case of athletic training? If this is true in general, then it follows that in the present case, Socrates and Crito should be concerned only with what the expert in right and wrong will think, not with what the majority will say. The fact that the latter have the powers of life and death in their hands is really irrelevant to the argument.
So this time he bring up the aesthetic training instead of a horse trainer stuff. So yeah, I think that
True. He brings it up, but it's the same argument
yeah,
over and
yeah, yeah,
over again.
yeah, yeah, same argument. But he
The
said
shoemaker, the horse trainer,
athletic trainer.
the athletic trainer, they're all experts. And once
Yeah,
again,
so
I know you don't agree with this, but I feel that this is his strongest argument against democracy. Democracy is made by people, statecraft is made by people who are not experts, and therefore it's a failure.
I disagree. You know that. So,
Well, he keeps bringing it up that the
but he
many
the,
aren't experts. I don't know how you can,
let
argue
me tell
against
you
that.
this. Okay, here in this McGill text, he's talking about the majority has a power of death and life, right? Okay,
Yeah.
but the expert has the power to decide what's right and wrong. Okay, so here uh, he is not criticize the democratic system. Okay, he faced death. He refused to. He decided to follow the law, which is democracy decide life and the death. But personally, he disagreed on the right and the wrong because that's only expert can decide. So he separate the political and the philosophy. Okay, so political, he still follow the democratic system, which decide death and the right and death and the life. He take he follow it. That's my point of view.
Okay. All right.
We continue?
Yeah, I just want to ask you one thing.
Okay, go ahead.
He seems to argue that what we need is more expert opinion. Do you think that Socrates considers himself to be an expert, and that's why he's able to make an argument based on reason, and that's why he believes that he is in the right in his decision?
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree. Okay.
Okay.
But life.
No, I'm not, you know, I don't mean to, use that as an argument that Socrates is anti-democratic. I just wanted
Okay.
to know what your interpretation of the importance of
Yeah.
expertise was. Okay.
Yes. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
In the considerations which follow, it is clear that Socrates is not at all interested in discussing the possibility or the means of escape, but rather its rightness or wrongness. His premises are that the really important thing is not to live, but to live well. And to live well means the same thing as to live honorably or rightly. Crito's concern about expense, reputation, and the upbringing of Socrates' children are those of the common people whose attitudes and acts are unrelated to reason. Socrates says our real duty is to consider one question only. Shall we be acting rightly in paying money and showing gratitude to those people who are going to rescue me and in escaping, or shall we really be acting wrongly in doing all this? If it becomes clear that such conduct is wrong, I cannot help thinking that the question whether we are sure to die or to suffer any other ill effect if we stand our ground and take no action ought not to weigh with us at all in comparison with the risk of doing what is wrong.
So, so Socrates more interest is only interested in right and wrong, not how to escape or so basically he want to talk about right or wrong are more important than right or death, right? Yeah, that's what I have. So,
And what that does is, among other things, is it establishes him as a deontological ethicist as opposed to a consequentialist. And it's just a striking example of a philosopher who charts a course where doing the right thing is more important than any other consideration. Deontological. Rather than happiness, fulfillment, and flourishing, which other philosophers stress, I take as a departure, he stresses doing the right thing.
the right thing, yeah.
Deontological.
Yes. Okay. Next. Wrongdoing.
Wrongdoing, Socrates holds, is reprehensible not merely on most, but on all occasions. There are no exceptions. While most people think it's natural and right to return wrongs done them, Socrates disagrees. It is never right to do a wrong or return a wrong or defend oneself against injury by retaliation. If this is so, and it is agreed that one should always fulfill morally right agreements, then it follows, Socrates concludes, that it would be wrong for him to leave without an official discharge by the state, for he would be doing the state an injury by breaking an implicit agreement with it. He explains what he means by personifying the Athenian laws and constitution and imagining the dialogue which might occur between them and himself were he to favor escape.
So here he personifies in the law. Okay, I think that's to me is quite interesting.
Me too.
Because from here to the end, right? The original dialogue. from here to the end become his monologue. Okay, and between imaginary laws speak to Socrates. Okay, so I think that's the
It's quite interesting because it's so unusual in among philosophers, great philosophers, to do this. But we see it every so often, but very rarely. Another example is when Boethius personifies philosophy, and
oh yeah,
Boethius has a conversation with philosophy as a woman, and they
yes.
have this long discussion.
But to me, I'm more interested in not only philosophizing. He used we. Okay, I don't know. To me, it's a little bit probably represent his democratic thinking.
Okay. Mhm.
That's I'm thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
But
Another
again, I'm
thing
not
that
sure. I'm not sure how does the Greek word use. Okay.
another something else which I read in a secondary source is that by having the this law
Mhm.
speak, um, he's able to give Plato an opportunity to express a lot of views that he has without having Socrates speak. Because
Oh,
apparently, according to the secondary source, Socrates never doesn't really indulge in long speeches. Even in the end, when you have these long speeches, they're by the Athenian stranger, right? And
okay.
Socrates is an interlocutor more than he is a speechifier. And so here he's able to make a long speech in the mouth of law.
So that's a Plato speak.
So that allows Plato to promulgate all his
Oh,
views without ever having Socrates give long speeches. Because whenever he has a long speech to be given, he gives it to someone else in the dialogue. In this case, he gives it to the personification of law.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, I think that make a lot of sense. Because he at this moment, the early dialogue, Plato still respect what Socrates thinking. So he doesn't want to use Socrates as speak mouth for Plato.
Yeah,
Oh,
right.
that's why he has a law speak, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. That's the original text I'm reading. What if the law then said, Socrates, did we agree on this? We and you, okay, to honor the decision that the city makes, okay? And that's your Socrates. Don't be surprised at what we are saying, but answer. Since you are used to participating in questioning and answering, come here. What reason can you give us and the city for trying to destroy us? Okay, if you escape, right? Did we not to begin with giving birth to you? And wasn't it through us that your father married your mother and conceived you? And how this of us, the laws concerning marriage, what fault you find to keep them from being good? So that's the dialogue between the
Yeah, I
whole.
see what you're saying.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
even
so that in
so this
personifying, yeah, go ahead.
I think this idea is very Platonic than Socratic, right? It's very patriotic thinking, okay? Even the marriage is granted, okay, by the laws, by the state. So without this marriage, there's no you, Socrates, right?
Yeah,
So, okay, so it's very authoritarian, top-down, and that's perfect represent Plato's idea.
yeah. Mhm.
Next. Next one is a long one. Yeah.
In the considerations which follow, it is clear that Socrates is not at all interested.
No.
No, they
Uh,
would first point
uh,
out to him
yeah,
that
yeah.
such an act would subvert the laws and the state. The latter cannot subsist if its legal decisions are to be set aside for the benefit of individuals. But suppose that Socrates should retort that the proposed escape was in reprisal for the wrong done him by the state. The answer of the laws to this would be that not only was there no provision made for such evasion and insubordination, but Socrates is under agreement to abide by the state's judgments. He has no legitimate complaint against them. The laws continue, but rather positive obligations to abide by them. The laws, by sanctioning the marriage of his parents, in a sense, gave him life itself. They also provided a proper education for him. He is thus their child and servant, and as such, does not have rights equal to theirs any more than a son has the right to rebel against his father. Indeed, compared with your mother and father and all of the rest of your ancestors, your country is something far more precious, more venerable, more sacred, and held in greater honor, both among gods and among all reasonable men. Whatever it orders, one must do unless he can justly persuade it otherwise. And of course, during the trial, Socrates failed to persuade the jury, though he was confident he might have done so if given more time.
Yeah, that's I can tell that's definitely Plato speaking.
Well, I'm not sure I agree with you on that.
So you think that's Socrates' idea?
Yes, I do. But I think, and I think that it's quite different from Plato, but not in the sense that of respecting authority. But even a pure Democrat who argues that that there's a social contract and that the laws due to that social contract should be binding. Even someone who believes strongly in the social contract democratic view of government can still believe that the individual owes his life and everything else in his life to the state, I think.
I think that's Platonic thinking, not Socrates thinking. Here's
But
my
Plato didn't believe in the social contract. And this is just, these are laws that are based. Look, Plato argued that the reason we should respect the laws of the Republic is that philosopher kings have made the laws, not it's because they have given us so much and we owe them gratitude. No, 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 no. It's all based on the wisdom of the archons, of the kings. Whereas in this particular case, the reason that we should respect the laws has more to do with gratitude that they have provided us with so much. Even though the authority is based only on the social contract.
Okay, let me put it in this way. Okay.
Let me just say that I don't disagree with you that there is in both Plato and in Socrates the point of view that you should respect the laws of the state where you live. But the reasons are very different.
Okay, at least in this paragraph, I don't see any social contract here. Do you agree? Do you see social
No,
contract
I
here?
do. I see that
You can hold on. You cannot say we as a social contract. That's nothing social contract. Okay.
we means the social contract of the people. When you
Well,
talk
hold
about
on.
we,
He say the dialogue go this way, right? The agreement between we and you. Okay.
yeah,
So
the people who made the social contract and you.
okay, so
The
we
people who
that
have formed
means
the social contract
that
and you have made an agreement.
yes, okay, so that's a social contract,
Yeah.
right? Okay, but I don't think here is focused on social contract.
No,
here,
it's focused on gratitude,
on gratitude, I agree.
but
Okay.
that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
the
part of the
gratitude,
social contract is that
yeah.
we should feel gratitude.
No, social contract is by my free will to agree, not by gratitude. I can totally
But
disrespect.
when we make, look,
You
we see
cannot.
this, we see the same trend in the social contract thinkers of Hobbes and
Yeah,
Rousseau.
yeah.
The people make a contract which we all buy into, and therefore we agree to the terms of the contract, and therefore we need to respect the laws because the people have given it authority, the law's authority.
You are right. We agree on contract, then we respect the law.
Yeah.
Okay. Agree go first. So we
Yeah.
don't respect the law, then agree. Okay. I think that's different, right?
Because look at what Hobbes says. Hobbes says, look at everything that the state gives you. Therefore, you owe the state obedience because of
I'm
the
not
social contract.
sure.
And that's what Socrates is saying. He's saying,
Oh,
look at what the state gives you. It gives you even your birth. It gives you the sanction of the marriage. It gives you everything. Therefore, you need to obey it. You owe it.
that's not Socrates said, that's the law said.
That's what
That's why
Socrates
I say
believes.
that's the Plato talking about. Socrates later on will agree on the later part, not on this part. But
I know Socrates isn't saying it, but he's,
no,
using
he
it as
said,
an argument.
yeah, Socrates agrees based on his free will, not based on the respecting gratitude. Socrates' agreement is based on free will.
But it's not based on the legitimacy of any particular law. It's more
Oh, okay.
based on the power of the state.
Here is my argument here. If you think about apology, during the apology, Socrates shows three cases. Okay, he is not following the order. Okay, in the old democracy, I forget the exact name. Ask Socrates to arrest somebody, he refused, right? And during the oligarchy period, 30 tyrant, he also supposed to do something, he also disobeyed. Okay, so Socrates always disobey based on his own free will, his judgment, what's the right thing to do, what's the law said. During the trial, okay, he do what he right, and then the law said, no, he just do his way. But when the law said you supposed to be executed, he was not going to escape. So in this way, he 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 will he has a free will to agree or disagree what the law said, but he always obey the law, which is based on his contract with the law. Okay, not based on the respect or the gratitude of the law. I think if he has the gratitude of the law, he will against even in the old democracy or in the because the state gives you the birth, you should not rebel against your parent like this. So you should always obey. I think that's my argument. Okay. Okay, so you will see he later in the social contract part. I will tell
Okay.
you
All right.
now, right?
Now, in spite of all the blessings vouchsafed to Athenian citizens, the laws continue. Any young man, upon reaching maturity, may evaluate the political order and the administration of justice, and if he disapproves, he is free to leave the state with his possessions. If, on the other hand, he surveys the political and judicial arrangement and voluntarily stays, his act is equivalent to an agreement to abide by the state's commands, or rather its proposals, since they are not blunt dictates, and the citizen has the choice of either obeying or persuading the state to change its decision. If Socrates should run away now, he would be more blameworthy than any other Athenian. His implicit agreement to abide by the law has been more explicit than that of any other citizen, because he, above all, has remained at home, never crossing the border except while on military duty. Although he admired Sparta and Crete because of their good governments and respect for law, he has never emigrated to those city-states. And again, during the trial, when the defendant was given the customary opportunity to propose an alternative penalty, Socrates did not choose banishment. His covenant with the state was thus made freely, consciously, and under no stress in relation to time. After all, he has spent 70 years in Athens.
Yeah, so here's my argument. The first, free will. He always can live, but he didn't live. So here is his social contract here is on this part because he has many opportunity to live, but he didn't. Okay. So number one.
That's a
Second,
good argument.
he is more liable than other people. Okay. Because if he was 30, I only agree in 20 years. Then I find out I don't like it. Okay. But he already agreed for at least 60 plus years. So right now you live. Okay. So he can escape if he was 30, but not 70.
Okay, I see your argument. Yeah.
And plus, it's difficult to adjust the new environment in the old age. So
Yeah. I just want to point out that this is a very impressive formulation of the social contract theory. And when I was reading Hobbes and Rousseau, not being fully aware that the social contract theory had been proposed earlier in the Crito, then I gave these other philosophers a great amount of credit for their original thinking. But it seems as if they just took this this
Plato.
notion that I'm sure Hobbes, who was the one who originated social contract theory, he spent a lot of time poring over the classics. I'm sure he was well aware of the Crito, and I don't know. I mean, everybody gives credit to the moderns for the social contract theory. So then the question is, okay, so the social contract theory was presented eloquently by Plato in his early career. And it didn't come around again in philosophy for another 2,000 years. What happened? And I would say that the conditions in Athens during this time period, during this 300-year period when there was democracy, that when Rome became an empire and then city-states stopped being a real thing, that the whole notion of the social contract no longer seemed that relevant. And then during the Middle Ages, during the time of the popes and the kings, that the social contract was not as persuasive. But then during the modern period, starting around the 1600s when and the 1700s, when Hobbes and Rousseau and Locke were writing, the conditions reemerged that hadn't occurred for thousands of years. So now the social contract theory became significant again.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting. I never think about this subject, but why it disappear, right? I think that's why it disappear, right? I'm not surprised. Okay, in China, okay, social concepts never appear, right? Okay, because it's a agricultural state. Okay, very few trading. Okay, so the concept. Well, they do have a contract, but contract more on the I owe you money. Okay, and we have to sign a contract. I will owe you $2,000. Okay, this kind of concept, right? Credit and
Very
debt.
interesting.
That's the thing, but not like a city state. I believe this merchant really need some contract, right? So
great point.
Yeah, and the agriculture, the most is I owe you $2,000, and that's the contract, something like this, right? So
very interesting. Yeah,
so,
that's very interesting. That's a good idea.
Yeah, but
yeah, the merchant culture. there are some geopolitical thinkers who divide the world into merchant cultures versus farming cultures.
Yeah, I believe.
It's
Or you can
fascinating.
see another way you look at more is marine state and
Marine state and so you're
land.
familiar with that too, huh?
Yeah, some people dislike my argument. Most of Chinese, mainland Chinese,
Yeah, because they don't consider themselves
they
they don't find the merchant sensibility.
no,
uh,
not this, not the
they don't
most
find it as
about
appealing.
most they don't like is I claim China is not a marine country,
Oh,
right?
that's fair.
But they because you see China, they try to expand in their navy, they try to go to Pacific, right? So most they China
Yeah, they're wannabes is what
they
they
want to be,
they
and
want to be, but their
that,
tradition
that
is isn't based on
that's why
maritime.
they hate me talking about China is not a marine country, okay? Because it kind of like
Yeah, I can see that. But yeah, but
humiliated them. Okay, so they are thinking it's a humiliation because I like to argue is German is the then country, so German can conquer France, all the Europe, but
wow.
not England because England is marine. Okay, so same as Japan. Japan can go all the Southeast Asian or the island, but not China because the marine country cannot conquer the land. Okay, so that's my argument. So there's the two words. Okay, and the marine country and the land
Yeah, but surely you must be aware that this is not an original argument on your part.
no no
This
no no.
these
Somebody
ideas are some of the most, you know, prominent of debates that are occurring in geopolitics in the world.
yeah, that's not definitely not mine. But the
But it's still
argument
the kind of debate that I find fascinating because I love geopolitical arguments like that.
yeah. I definitely is not my own idea, but I read this one
No,
and
the most famous philosopher nowadays who stresses this idea is this Alexander Dugin over in Russia, who's a controversial figure, who argues that much of the problems that are occurring in the world are due to this conflict between maritime cultures and farming cultures, just very similar to what you're talking about,
yeah,
and land cultures versus sea cultures.
yeah, you
And
can see,
Dugin didn't invent these ideas. He got them from an earlier philosopher, geopolitical thinker, whose name was Mackinder, who's very famous for writing about this in the early 1900s. So I find these fascinating ideas.
yeah, I even go one more step, right? The marine country will tend to go democracy, and
Right,
then country will not.
right,
Well, you can talk about in history because merchant is individual and the agriculture you deal with the water resources.
right. Yeah.
Another thing in the modern time you can see is the landlocked country have a strong army. So army is very good to
Right.
down the rebel, right?
Yeah.
And the maritime country, they have a strong navy. Navy is not good.
Well, that none of these ideas are original with you.
I know, it's
These
not,
are all the ideas that these geopolitical thinkers
yeah,
talk
but
about.
I like this
I
idea.
wish more people would talk about these. These are the kind of philosophy that I find so
I
interesting.
also like it a lot, but you have faced a
We
lot.
both like it.
Okay, let's move on.
It's not completely irrelevant because
Yeah, I know.
it's
It's not
related to
the
theory
contract.
of the social contract and the
Yeah,
question of
that
why hasn't it been prominent except in certain periods of history? Yeah,
probably the Roman is the fault because Roman is a big land.
right, exactly.
Where are we? We are in conclusion. Uh,
I don't see any beginning paragraphs except for furthermore.
Oh, here. Uh,
Furthermore, the law is asked, what will Socrates gain by escaping? The risk of banishment or loss of property would be inflicted upon his friends. If he entered well-ordered states, he would be regarded as a lawbreaker by their citizens and would confirm the jury's opinion of him. But if he chose to go to states with little or no respect for law and order, would that kind of life be worthwhile? He could not continue to converse as usual about goodness in persons and government, for it would be hypocrisy to do so. He would not want to rear his children in such an environment, and if they remained in Athens, they would be more likely to receive good care with Socrates dead than with him alive, illegally and in exile. Surely his friends, if true to their profession, would care for them.
okay, so here after done with the deontological argument, right now he go to the consequentialist argument. So
Okay, yeah, that's good.
yeah, that's
Yeah. But also, there is some deontology in this too.
oh yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Because here's it, this is what's interesting about this particular deontological point. He's arguing that it is not just or honorable to, well, you could say it's consequential. But what's interesting to me is, I don't know, I'd like you to give some feedback on this.
Right.
If a philosopher flees before he is convicted, then does that make flight less dishonorable than if he flees after he's convicted? Because most of the philosophers who fled, for example, Anaxagoras and Aristotle, did so before there was any real conviction.
That's a good
You're
question.
convicted and then you're sentenced to death and then you flee. I get a hint in that particular paragraph that would be more ignoble
Yeah,
because of
I
its
kind of
illegality.
yeah, I think you asked a very good question, and then I probably agree with your answer, but I'm not sure uh, how to explain it. Okay, I feel this way. Okay, it's more ignoble. Okay, if you escape after conviction, uh, just like if you want to have a how do you call it? Feud, right? With you have to fight with somebody, okay, and then before the fight, like Tyson and what's his name? Jake, Jake. Who Tyson fight with? Do you remember? Jake Paul. Paul Jake, right?
I don't know. That doesn't sound familiar. But this is related to like a duel.
Yeah, like a duel. Okay, so before you you uh before uh the duel, right? You decide to leave,
Hmm.
okay, and then you have the duel, you lose, and you say, "Oh, it's not fair," and something like this, right? So
Right.
it's honor, So uh, yeah, the person I talk about is Jake Paul. You don't know this?
No.
Tyson and Jake Paul have boxing.
Oh, okay.
Tyson is 58 years old, and
Oh, right.
Jake Paul
Yeah.
is
And
26.
Tyson went through the fight and lost, but he lost honorably.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And he
Mhm.
didn't say like, okay,
Oh,
so
right.
he
Yeah.
can
I
say,
should have
I
known
don't
that.
want to fight with the young guy. Okay, so it's
Right. Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's the example I try to bring up.
Oh, now of course, I should know that because I'm well aware of the fight and everything that happened.
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
you know how much Tyson make?
20 million?
I think 200, 20 million. Yeah, 20 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. still worth it.
Yeah, a lot of people tuned in. A lot of people.
Including me. I stayed there to watch. So
Well, of course, it's a world event.
yeah. I think that you asked a very good question. I never think about this way, but it could be a very practical question, because I may face the same situation. So,
Yeah.
okay, here, right? In conclusion, right?
In conclusion, the laws advise Socrates, do not think more of your children or of your life or of anything else than you think of what is right, so that when you enter the next world, you may have all this to plead in your defense before the authorities there. To disobey by escaping will not really better either his friends or Socrates in this world or the next. As it is, you will leave this place when you do as the victim of a wrong done not by us, the laws, but by your fellow men. But if he retaliates and returns evil for evil, breaking his agreement and wrongdoing himself, his friends, his country, and the laws themselves, he will incur the wrath of the laws both here and in the next life.
Okay, so the argument go further, right? From the ontological argument, okay, and go to the consequentialist, and then go to the next world. I mean, next life, I believe. Okay.
Yeah, that's part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the typical the argument, will go, so just so
But let me point out a separate observation. I would agree with what you're saying and the kind of the progression that's occurring ultimately to the afterlife. But what I find interesting is this notion of that reason should rule. And one of the most famous plays ever written is the Orestia by Aeschylus, which is a trilogy which starts with the murder of Agamemnon by Clytemnestra. And then because Agamemnon has sacrificed their daughter Iphigenia. And there are three plays, and they're all about vengeance. And everybody, after, first of all, Clytemnestra kills Agamemnon. But then in the next generation, one of the kinsmen of Agamemnon kills Clytemnestra, and so on and on. Then in the third play to this magnificent trilogy, the Furies come in and they have to make a decision about whether this feud should continue. And they have a long discussion, and they finally say that in Athens, we believe in rule of law, not rule of vengeance. And it represented, many people feel, many scholars feel, a kind of turning point in human history when a civilization and culture would argue that reason, that law should be based on the rule of reason rather than passion and emotion, which had been the norm before then.
Oh, okay, yeah, I agree with you, but
So I think it's a Greek notion to emphasize the rule of reason in law. And I believe that the Greeks in general were proud of this. And I think Socrates, in making an argument for it, in a sense, is promoting some of the best virtue of Athenian society.
okay, I'm familiar with the story. I read the story a long time ago, but my conclusion could be a little bit different than you. Instead of rule of reason, I think about the judgment should be impartial. In other words, you should have the
That's a
some.
rule of reason.
Yeah, that's why I'm not very different. But my taking is I didn't okay. The reason never show in my mind. Okay, but what I read this story is about we should bring the impartial party to make a judgment. So in another way, the judge should be blinded. It's a blind because you don't have a relation. You cannot have, for example, you and me have argument. You should not bring your sister or my brother as a judge. We should bring somebody. Totally, we pick out somebody from the street and they make a decision. So I think that's I think you are right. That's the
Yeah,
rule.
I think you're right too.
Because how this third person on the street can make judge between you and me, right? Since he has no relationship between me, neither me nor you. So only thing he can base is the reason. So, so it's
And
rule.
Socrates is making the argument in these early dialogues, particularly this one, that in particular that justice is based on that justice, rightness, correct action should be based on reason.
Yeah.
Which is many ways we take a lot of it for granted, but we shouldn't, because it's quite a bold assertion that we should base a good life and righteous action on reason, not passion. It's quite striking. It's a prescriptive ethics, which is,
Yeah, I agree with you.
We shouldn't take for granted. And, we should also realize that it's far from universal.
Yeah.
We have tended to, we've tended to integrate that notion into our global society, and we've tended to adopt it, but there are alternatives.
And with the reason, okay, written rule, you need the next life. Okay. Here, it's
it's eternal.
Yeah, you have to,
because reason is eternal. Reason is,
and you have to think about next life. Okay, that's why Socrates bring this next life. So it's also important in the next. He used the word next world, right? Yeah. So yeah, I think that's why it become important here.
Well, that doesn't persuade me very much, because I don't believe in a next life. But one thing, if I look at it metaphorically, I can see that he might be arguing that reason is eternal and goes beyond our current life. And that is, even if I don't agree with it, I do think that that's an important statement by Plato. It tends to, it anticipates Plato's later system of philosophy, which is based on reason is eternal, the forms are eternal.
Okay, I think I want to think about this, for the next time, because your point, okay, even the life, individual life is not eternal. There's no next life, but the reason itself is eternal. Instead of we have the next life. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a
but
good.
Plato might not have been saying that, but I think that that's an implication.
Sure, he's not saying that. He believes.
No, he's not saying that. He's talking. He doesn't state it at all, but it's kind of an inference in a way.
So one way to think about next life and the reason, okay, the rule by reason, right? One way to think about that's a Kantian way to think about is the immortality of soul. It's a necessary condition. Okay, that's one way to think about it.
Socrates, right? Yeah, Kant makes
another
very similar argument.
Yeah, but another way to argue is I use this one as a next life as a means to convince you. Okay.
Right.
That's another way to talk about this, right?
Yeah, that's a great parallel. Yeah,
I think that's
true.
Two different way to see the adult people, like a Christian.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great similarity.
Like a Christian will see the next life as a means, okay, for the justice, right? Because not next life, heaven or immortality of soul, right?
Yeah.
The argument, right? So
because that's an argument for the transcendental nation transcendental nature of true morality. According to Kant, I would say that
No, Kant argument is this is the necessary condition. Okay. So look, guys, the reason I bring this one is take as a necessary condition, which is Kant. One take as a means, okay, to make you convince you, okay, live just life. So seems like you believe neither one, right? So you, I mean Jim, okay.
no, I don't know. I definitely don't believe in an afterlife, but I'm open to listening to Kant
Okay.
discussing the necessary,
Okay, I think that's another big
necessity of it.
subject. I'm interested in this one, and then if
No,
I
the only reason I would disagree with it is that I tend to be a very radical consequentialist. And I don't believe that deontological ethics that's not the ethics that I
yeah, I know. Yeah,
subscribe to.
yeah. So, but that's
I think
the
it's a constant, ethics should involve constant trade-offs and consequences and unintended consequences and all the other aspects.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, that's another big argument, big debate here. Okay.
that doesn't mean I don't see Plato and Kant's point of view.
Oh yeah. I think they all have their argument. My
Yeah.
concern would be if I don't believe Kant, I don't believe Christian. Okay, is there any other choice, or I can do whatever I want to do? Okay, as long as not affect my this life.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah,
That's been the Christian argument
yeah.
for, thousands of years.
Okay, short paragraph.
Where are we?
Here, Socrates conclude.
Socrates thus concludes the speeches he has put in the mouth of the laws and asks Crito whether he has anything to say in opposition to these arguments, which seem so persuasive that Socrates professes to be scarcely able to hear any others. Since Crito offers no refutation, the matter is decided. Socrates will obey the law, even though it means his death.
Okay, so here bring to the ending, the end. Okay, so the rest will be
You
uh
know, the reason that at the last part of the last paragraph, um, you said, well, if you don't believe in this kind of eternality, um, which is represented by afterlife, then people can really do anything. There really are no boundaries. I would say that for me, the boundary is one that I agree that Plato, that we need to care for our soul. And if we act in a way that we don't approve of ourselves, we damage our soul. Now, I don't take it to such an extreme length as Plato does, but I do think that that is a good argument.
with the soul.
The damaging the soul, that
Why
we
you
need to
care?
care for our soul.
Well, and do you believe the immortality of soul? If your
No,
soul,
I just believe that it exists during our life, but we still have to take care of our soul because it affects our, whether we are happy or flourish.
but how about if you die, the soul will perish, right?
Yeah,
And why you care?
because while I'm alive, if my soul is damaged, then who can flourish and have eudaimonia under those conditions? If your soul is damaged, who even wants to live? As Plato says, if your soul is disfigured, who wants to live? And the person who made the argument best was Dostoevsky in Crime and Punishment, where he
I
said,
just,
"You
yeah.
can get away with anything, just take the gold." It didn't work out for him, did it? So that's why people need to listen to themselves and their own conscience, because their soul can't, if they allow their soul to be damaged, as Raskolnikov did, then they will not be happy or fulfilled. It doesn't have anything to do with right and wrong to me. It has to do with flourishing, which I believe is an alternative.
Pretty good. Yeah, that's great. Okay, I just have to say because I familiar with Dostoevsky talking about, but that's the first time I connect this one with Kant's argument. Okay, or
Right.
okay, that's great. Yeah. Okay. So here we just read that that's the ending of argument, and the conversation just end here. Okay, so basically just say. Yeah, as far as you were able. So the law will say, so do not be persuaded. The law told Socrates, so do not be persuaded by Crito to do what he said instead of what we said. Okay, so and then Socrates asked, you have anything to say? And oh, so that's the interesting part. The Socrates told, after this, Socrates said, this is what I seem to hear from the laws, just as cherubins seem to hear the pipe. Okay. I don't know, you familiar with cherubins? You familiar with this one?
Sounds vaguely familiar. Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's a dancer or whatever.
Okay.
Here, so basically Socrates described is the laws say something. So he hear this just like correspondence, right? And hear the pipe, he will start to dance, follow the law. And the Crito's answers, let us act in this way, since this is the way, this is where the God lead us. Okay. So I'm not sure the God how Greek used because I probably read the Jiwa's translation, so it used
Yeah.
God. So I'm not sure what.
hmm
So I think that's the end. Okay, of the
Yeah. Yeah. So by following the laws, we do a dance, right?
just like the Caribbeans hear the pipe, right? The music will start to dance. So
Right.
so here it's like he Socrates still follow the law, and law has nothing wrong, but the wrong is his fellow man. Okay, so everything Socrates is rebellion against the people. Okay, I think that's what he's talking about. Yeah, and he can disagree with the laws, and if you disagree, you can try to convince your fellow man to change the law. Okay, or you can escape. Okay, because I disagree. I don't want to sign the contract anymore. I think that's what I read on the Socrates' political view on the law. So
Me too.
next, so the rest are all McGill's, right?
Right.
Few readers, right?
Few readers will leave the Crito without making a personal judgment on Socrates' decision and his justification for it. The difficulty of making an adequate one is complicated by several factors. Socrates' trial, as far as we know, was legal. Now, notice, Jason, this is the argument I was making earlier,
Okay.
which is once a legal trial has been performed and he has already been judged guilty, then at that point, if he flees, then that's more dishonorable.
Yeah, because
Yeah. As
yeah, I think
Professor,
you are right. You are right. So yeah, the Saudis. So yeah, I think this one is clear, right? You can escape. That means I don't trust the law. Okay.
yes,
So I don't trust the law because this law is favor to this kind of people. Okay,
right.
favor to white people, not Asian. So I decide to escape. But if you decide to engage, then you the better win. Otherwise, you cannot. That's a bad law. Okay, so
Exactly. As Professor A.E. Taylor notes and discussed in the Apology, the real reasons for which Socrates was prosecuted concern matters for which general amnesty had been extended by the Act of Oblivion, and so the court could not have jurisdiction over these. Hence the failure of Anytus and Meletus, Socrates' accusers, to explain their charges. However, though the ostensible charges were thus specious, And though Socrates showed them to be ridiculous, the jury had voted in proper order to convict him, and so the letter of the law had been fulfilled. The very fact that this case clearly showed that an innocent and supremely good man could be condemned unjustly under the law, and hence that the law needed revision, was cited as an excellent reason for escape. But Socrates argued that such reform should be demanded at a time other than that at which his own fate was affected, in order that reform would not be motivated by mere favoritism.
I think that's another good concept, right? In the you should not make law with favorism, right? So
Yeah.
is that some? I remember there's some term, right? In legal term, yeah, uh, talking like against the favorism. You cannot. I don't
Right.
know. I just try to think about. I cannot find.
Yeah.
What's that?
Mm-hmm.
Is that
Yeah.
the ex post facto? No, it's not ex post
Mm.
facto. That's another thing. I don't know. Do you remember this words or no?
No, but it goes along with the notion that justice is blind. You should not
Yeah, you
take
should
into
not.
consideration the person, and it's rule of law.
Yeah, you cannot say, oh, because me, so I
Mm-hmm.
change it, right?
Yeah,
So
but
you must
it,
look at
it does give us a little bit of sympathy for the people making the judgment, I think,
the people who.
because we realize that the country was racked by civil war, that many people had died, first of all, in the expedition with Alcibiades, but then also later, when, the oligarchs took control, there was a lot of killing and death. And then, democracy had been restored only very recently. And here was Socrates going around and inciting young people, especially people who hated democracy, the blood of the aristocrats, and inciting them to rebel against authority. And I think that, it's only natural that people would be worried about this. But the thing is that for pragmatic purposes, they had passed a law of oblivion because they needed to give everyone amnesty. However, the problem with the amnesty was that after the amnesty, Socrates continued stirring people up. So everybody had amnesty for past behavior, but Socrates continued to stir people up. And I think that, this concerned a lot of people because they saw that, I mean, yeah, you have to understand that this was a real civil war with a lot of killing on both sides. So
So in a
don't you
way,
feel kind of sympathy for the people who were upset at Socrates?
so the best way actually is just escape will be the better way. So
Well, if only he could have, just,
not sure,
lived
no sure.
quietly at that
Just
point. But no, I don't know if there really was a solution. It was just, it was just a time of great turmoil.
yeah,
It was
yeah.
really right during this, a civil war that was occurring.
Well, but again, I just may make my statement. I really like this society. Okay, very civilized, even more civilized
Yeah,
than
I get that.
they
Yeah,
have the egg of oblivion. Okay, give
yeah.
everybody some better than Biden just
Well,
popular.
that happens a lot. And, there was an oblivious act in our own Civil War in the
Really?
United
Oh,
States.
yeah, 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 yeah,
There
yeah.
was amnesty given to all of the generals and everyone.
Oh, that because we follow the Western tradition is much better. It doesn't happen
No, I think there's a lot of a pragmatic reason for it too.
yeah, but it is not like, after that, the winner was try to, you see what happened in China, Cultural Revolution, what happened in the
In
ballpark,
France,
yeah, in ballpark, what's going on, so
right. Hmm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's terrible, so
Yeah.
I like this society, being honest. Even Socrates got killed, but
Yeah.
um,
But as Socrates makes the law say in the
well,
present,
where we are. Socrates does. Eh,
Socrates thus concludes the speeches.
no, no, no. Do we read this one?
I think so.
Oh no, but here.
But as Socrates makes the law say in the present dialogue, it is not the laws, but the men administering them who wronged him. Socrates argued that respect for law in general is more valuable than one man's life lost by maladministration.
Yeah. So, okay. Probably we can continue.
Yeah. This again is a delicate point. Had the miscarriage of justice occurred merely through ignorance, though of course Socrates regarded vice as a kind of ignorance, it would have been easier to accept the sacrifice. But the reader finds it difficult to avoid feeling that the court is more intent on ridding Athens of Socrates than it is on reaching a just verdict. It is true that Socrates argued that were he to evade the death penalty, people would think him insincere in his former teaching about integrity and obedience to the law. But Crito might well have turned one of his own statements against him by replying that it is only what reasonable and wise men think that really matters. Nevertheless, the example set by escape might have been harmful to men of less comprehension.
Okay. 14. Yeah. So, you anything to talk about this?
No, not really.
Yeah. So it's clear. Okay. Continue. Just 1 minute. Last paragraph.
Yes. Socrates perceived the value of consistency and stability in the state and its dispensation of justice. A state does not consist merely of the persons administering and living in it at any given time. To function best, a state must have a continuity transcending the irregularities of individual fortunes. Presumably, this was Socrates' intent in valuing the state above parents and ancestors, though modern Western readers may feel that Socrates revered the state too much. But whether the reader agrees with Socrates' decision here, he can hardly fail to admire the philosopher's devotion to principle, nor deny that the nobility of such a death enhances life for the living.
Yeah, I think that's a good conclusion
I
for.
agree.
Yeah, that's a
I
good.
like it.
Some. That's why I like Fido a lot because the proper death can or well prepared death can enhance your life and other people's life.
Mm.
I think we should all consider about because there's many ways to die, right?
Mm.
Crucifixion, okay, like Jesus, okay, or self-immolation, okay, like some Buddhist monk over there,
Mm-hmm.
and then well, you can do the human bomber, okay, the terrorist doing, or die in the battlefield like a brave soldier. There's many ways to die. Okay, so uh, I think how to die. That's why I keep thinking about Phaedrus. Not really I want to follow Socrates, but seriously thinking about how to die, prepare your loved one how to die. Probably one of the most important, Uh,
Well, that's very interesting. It's
yeah,
good to hear your views on that.
yeah, I think that's quite important. Probably I'm aged, okay, and I start to Uh, I see my father pass away. My mom is in old age, even she's healthy, but we all know she not many years, right? So everything happened, right? My dog is also, I don't know. Doctor say 1 more year, so I don't know. So
Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so so many things, big, small, there's many things, so I think that's to me that's quite important for
Well,
personal.
that's food for thought for me, Jason.
You didn't
'Cause
think
I'm
about
getting up there in years also.
it?
And I really don't have that same viewpoint, but I like your sentiment.
Okay, thank you. So yeah. So we're done for today.
Yeah, very good, Jason. Thanks
Good.
for joining with me again.